At 03:00 a.m. November 12, 2025, the Black Sea, Russia launched its most valuable shipment to date, racing towards China to cash a check for a war it was sinking into. But in exactly 63 seconds, Ukraine would deliver an answer aimed directly at the tanker's engine room, turning that ship into the world's brightest bonfire. The instrument of that answer is an 18-foot ghost gliding 2 miles from shore. Its name is Magura V5. Its primary weapon isn't speed, it's physics. With a draft of just 1.3 feet, it rides so low in the water that its radar cross-section is smaller than a seabird's. To the powerful Russian naval radar scanning the horizon, it's a phantom hiding below the 50-foot radar horizon, a target that, for all practical purposes, doesn't exist. But inside its belly, a surprise is waiting. 4 10-inch FPV drones, killer bees, each armed with a 6.6-pound RPG warhead. This is where any Russian analyst would nod knowingly. To reach the tanker, the Magura must first slip past the Seavash gas rig. This is a 260-foot steel fortress bristling with 60 elite troops, Igla-S man-portable missiles, and Kornet anti-tank weapons. At its peak sits that Neva radar, Russia's all-seeing eye, capable of tracking 200 targets over a 28-mile radius. To the tanker crew, that fortress makes them invincible. 100 miles away in Odessa, a Ukrainian operator sees it differently. On his screen, the tanker isn't a ship, it's a set of coordinates. A $100 million problem waiting for a solution. His solution doesn't need to defeat the fortress. It just needs to blind it. And tonight, Ukraine has 2 silent allies to help pull off the heist. The first is a thick fog, a blanket that reduces Russian visibility to less than a mile, rendering their expensive optics completely useless. The second is the sea itself, with 4-foot waves creating a constant shifting cover, making a low-riding ghost boat impossible to spot with the naked eye. The stage is set, the trap is sprung, and the Russians are about to get a very expensive lesson in underestimation. As the Magura closes to 0.6 miles, its cargo bay slides open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing the 4 killer bees nestled inside. This isn't a simultaneous launch, this is a symphony. First, FPV number 1 takes off, it doesn't charge the rig. Instead, it begins a steady climbing orbit reaching an altitude of 200 feet. Its job isn't to fight. It's a mobile relay station, a temporary satellite that will ensure its brothers never lose contact even when all hell breaks loose. Next, FPVs number 3 and 4 launch, peeling off to opposite sides and beginning low circling patterns like sharks lingering just out of sight, patiently waiting for the scent of blood. Finally, FPV number 2 roars to life. Its 4 brushless motors spin up to 20,000 rounds per minute, a high-pitched scream that rips through the night silence. It rockets straight for the Seavash rig, and then it activates its Mirage electronic warfare package. This isn't conventional radio jamming, it's far more insidious. The Mirage doesn't try to blind the Russian radar, it drives it insane. By recording the Neva radar's own scan signal and rebroadcasting it dozens of times with calculated delays and azimuth shifts, it creates a ghost army. On the Russian operator's screen inside the Seavash control room, a single blip suddenly becomes a digital nightmare. 40, then 50 phantom signals bloom out of nowhere, all moving at high speed and on unpredictable trajectories. The Neva system, designed to track 200 targets obeying the laws of physics, is now confronted by a swarm that obeys no laws at all. Its processor begins to choke. Alarms blare through the control room. The operator screams into his radio, his voice cracking with panic. Too many targets cannot determine main axis of attack. In the chaos, the Russian operator does exactly what his military textbook trained him to do: target the threat that appears the most dangerous. On his screen, one signal is moving faster, more erratically, and shining brighter than the rest. It's FPV number 2, the decoy. "Target locked!" he yells. An Igla-S missile launches from another soldier's shoulder, a streak of fire cutting through the fog. The missile, guided by infrared, homes in on the heat signature of FPV number 2's straining motors. And it's exactly what the Ukrainian planners were counting on. A brilliant fireball erupts in the night sky as the Igla-S finds its mark. FPV number 2 and its Mirage package disintegrate, and with them the 49 ghost signals on the Russian radar screen vanish. For a moment in the control room, there's silence, then a cheer of relief. They got it. They think they've repelled the main assault. But they have made a fatal mistake. They wasted a valuable missile and their focus on a technological magic trick. While they were celebrating FPV number 1, the signal relay was still calmly circling overhead, transmitting a perfect data stream. And FPV number 3, the first shark just received the signal to attack. It stops circling, it pitches its nose down and accelerates, transforming from a patient predator into a guided projectile. Its target, the one piece of equipment that allows the CVASH rig to be a fortress, the Neva radar antenna. Through the drone's camera, the operator sees the world tilting wildly as he dives. The massive steel structure of the rig grows in his view at an alarming rate. He can see the faint glow of lights on the lower decks and the dark rotating shape of the radar antenna at its highest point. He has one shot to turn Russia's all-seeing eye into a $100 million piece of scrap metal. Back in the Russian control room, the brief moment of celebration is shattered. A new alarm shrieks. A single high-speed contact has appeared seemingly out of nowhere, already inside their minimum engagement range. It's moving too fast. "Contact bearing 090 diving!" The operator yells, his voice filled with disbelief. "How did it get so close? They don't have time to find an answer." The 6.6-pound RPG warhead strapped to FPV number 3 is a masterpiece of brutal physics. It isn't just an explosion, it's a shaped charge designed to create the Monroe effect. Upon impact, the explosive charge doesn't just detonate outwards, it focuses its entire energy inwards, collapsing a copper cone liner into a jet of molten metal traveling at over 26,000 feet per second. The drone strikes the base of the antenna assembly. For a microsecond, there's nothing. Then the shaped charge detonates. The molten copper jet punches through the antenna's protective aluminum housing as if it were paper. It instantly shreds the delicate high-frequency waveguide, the very component that carries the radar signals. The explosion travels down the waveguide like a bolt of lightning, frying every sensitive electronic component in its path. To the soldiers on the rig, the explosion is surprisingly small, a sharp crack, a flash of light, and a shower of sparks. But in the control room, the effect is catastrophic. Every screen connected to the Neva radar goes black simultaneously. The reassuring sweep of the radar line is gone, replaced by a dead, silent static. Their world has just gone dark, they are blind, and the second shark is about to attack. The CVASH rig's entire layered defense had been built around that electronic eye. Now it was blind. The silence in the control room lasted only a second before it was shattered by the commander's voice screaming over the radio, his tone cracking. "Visual acquisition ZU-23 suppressing fire on anything that moves." On the open deck, the ZU-23 gunner didn't need a second command. His job was no longer precision targeting, it was area denial. He stomped on the foot pedal and the twin-barreled 23mm cannon roared to savage life, spitting out 600 rounds a minute. That's 10 high-explosive shells every second, turning the foggy air into a lethal snowstorm of tracers and shrapnel. For the FPV number 4 operator in Odessa, his world had just turned into a probability equation. His screen was a chaotic mess of sea spray, muzzle flashes, and incoming red tracers. He was no longer flying a profile. He was in a close-range dogfight. "Tracers high evasive dive," he muttered, reacting on pure instinct. He shoved the stick forward and the drone plunged towards the waves. A burst of shells tore through the air where it had been a half second ago. A clean miss. He juked right then, dove again, his movements sharp and unpredictable. The Russian gunner on the rig cursed, trying to track the impossibly agile target. "It's too fast, I can't get a lead," he growled, anticipated the drone's next move, and fired a third, longer burst. Not where the drone was, but where he prayed it was going to be. This time he got lucky. A single 23mm tracer round found its mark. It didn't vaporize the drone. Instead, it smashed into the carbon fiber arm of Rotor 3 with a sickening crack. On the operator's HUD, his screen flashed red. Warning Rotor 3, RPM deviation 14%. Warning gyroscopic stability fault. The drone shuddered violently, lurching sickeningly to the left as its flight computer frantically tried to compensate. It was hit. It was wounded. On the rig, the Cornet missile operator, watching through his thermal sight, saw exactly what he was waiting for. The drone's neat, sharp heat signature had suddenly become a flickering, unstable blob. It was a predator's instinct. He knew he was looking at a wounded animal. "Target is hit! He's crippled! I have a lock!" he yelled to his squad leader. "Fire!" was the reply. The Ukrainian operator saw the brilliant white flash of the Cornet's launch in his feed. A death sentence screaming towards him at Mach 1. He knew the math. His drone was damaged. Its agility was gone. It could not outrun it. It could not turn it. He had less than 3 seconds to live. His mind raced, processing the telemetry data, the wind speed, the missile's trajectory. There was one option left. Instead of trying to dodge, he did the one thing the missile's guidance logic could never anticipate. He cut power to all 4 motors. The drone stopped being an aircraft and became a 30-pound rock falling out of the sky. The Kornet missile, its computer program to intercept a target on an aerodynamic trajectory, suffered a logic failure. Its target had simply vanished from its predicted flight path. It screamed through the exact point in space where the drone should have been. A perfect shot against a target that was no longer there. A miss. And its journey ended by slamming directly into the upper deck of the oil tanker. The explosion was catastrophic. The missile's tandem-charged warhead designed to defeat the reactive armor of a main battle tank effortlessly vaporized the tanker's 20mm steel deck, but the real devastation was the follow-through. The missile's still-burning rocket motor buried itself deep within a network of high-pressure fuel lines, instantly igniting the crude oil. A geyser of fire and black smoke erupted into the night sky. The Russians, in their moment of perceived triumph, had become the instrument of their own spectacular disaster. Everyone on that rig, every analyst watching thought the mission was over. They wrong. A deep guttural roar, heavier and more menacing than any drone, suddenly cut through the sound of gunfire. It's the Magura. It was the finisher. The drone boat leaped forward, its water jet propulsion pushing it to a blistering 42 knots. Its target was now perfectly illuminated by the fires its enemy had started the tanker's engine room vulnerable and exposed. On the tanker's bridge, the crew's panicked shouts over the radio were drowned out by a new horrifying realization as they watched 200 pounds of bad news screaming towards them across the water. It's the boat! The boat is attacking! Turn, turn! 5 seconds to impact. 4, 3. This is a collision of physics and brutal overwhelming force. First, there's the kinetic energy, 1.2 million foot-pounds, the equivalent of a freight train hitting a brick wall which buckles the hull plating. Then the 500-pound TNT warhead detonates. This generates a 1/500 psi shockwave that doesn't just punch a hole, it travels through the ship's steel frame like a seismic event. The shockwave instantly ruptures the main fuel tanks, atomizing their contents into a fine mist. This explosive fuel-air mixture, far more powerful than the TNT alone, finds the fire already raging on deck. The world's brightest bonfire is lit. For the first few seconds after the impact, there is no sound. Only a blinding white-hot flash that vaporizes the fog and turns night into day. Then comes the shockwave, a physical blow that rolls across the water and slams into the Sivash rig, shattering windows and knocking men off their feet. It is followed by a deafening, soul-shaking roar as 500,000 barrels of crude oil begin to burn. The tanker doesn't just explode, it disintegrates. The 1/500 psi shockwave that ripped through its frame didn't just rupture fuel tanks. It created a catastrophic structural failure. The 800-foot-long ship, under the immense stress of the explosion and the sudden weight shift, literally lifts out of the water. With a groan of tortured steel that can be heard, it snaps in half. The two burning sections, now monuments to a failed mission, begin their slow, final descent to the bottom of the Black Sea. In just under 13 minutes, a plan executed by a handful of operators 100 miles away had achieved 5 devastating kills. A $100 million asset plus its precious cargo had been turned into worthless burning scrap metal. The most obvious result is the pillar of fire and smoke rising thousands of feet into the sky, a signal visible from Crimea. The Sivash rig, once the all-seeing eye of the northwestern Black Sea, is now a blind, isolated outpost. Its most advanced surveillance capability is gone, and its defenders are left staring into the darkness, wondering what comes next. The tanker and the 500,000 barrels of fuel it was carrying to fund Russia's war are now a permanent artificial reef. This is where the real damage begins. The loss of a single tanker from Russia's shadow fleet is a problem. Russia now knows that its primary method of sanctions busting, using old uninsured tankers protected by static military outposts, is a failed strategy. The international maritime insurance market, already wary of these ghost ships, will now designate the entire northwestern Black Sea as a war risk zone, sending premiums skyrocketing. Russia's only alternative is to reroute its oil shipments through the already congested Arctic Passage, a journey that takes weeks longer and costs millions more per trip. Ukraine didn't just sink a ship, they threw a wrench into the gears of Moscow's entire shadow economy, effectively cutting Russia's Black Sea oil exports by 5%, while the Russian Ministry of Defense scrambles to release a statement about a technical malfunction and a fire caused by improperly stored equipment. Satellite imagery from NASA and Maxar, combined with dozens of viral videos from Crimean onlookers, tells a different story. The myth of Putin's impenetrable Black Sea fortress, a narrative he has spent years building, has been shattered in a single night. This is the checkmate. The attack creates an impossible strategic dilemma for Moscow. To prevent this from happening again, they must now pull their most advanced and valuable air defense systems like the Panzer M away from the front lines in places like Donbass and deploy them to protect static low-value assets like oil rigs and ports. Every Panzer system moved to guard a gas rig is one less system protecting a Russian armored column from Ukrainian attack helicopters. This single brilliant operation, built on a lie and executed with precision, has forced Russia to use its own strength to weaken itself. So let's look at the final math on this masterpiece of asymmetric warfare. One repurposed unmanned boat costing around $250,000 plus 4 FPV drones worth less than a couple of gaming PCs just eliminated a $100 million tanker and crippled Russia's entire shadow fleet logistics in the Black Sea. That's the kind of strategic win that changes the entire dynamic of a war. So, which kill of the night was the most impressive? Was it the surgical strike by FPV number 3 that blinded the Neva radar? Or was it Magura's final devastating ram that finished the job? Let me know your vote in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you love a good plot twist, make sure you're subscribed to more stories. Bye for now.